Yeah, so anyway, I'm Nate. When I interned at Apple last summer, the SwiftUI was like the hot new thing that came out. It was just last summer that they introduced it, so it's still very new. I actually ended up working on a project with it, so that's kind of how I got familiar with it. And so I'm going to show you a little bit about how to make a really simple app. We're going to start with Tap Game, which if you were in iOS Club, you would have seen that 2 weeks ago, something like that. It's basically like the two buttons on the top and the bottom, and then you got the score in the middle. So the tricky thing about SwiftUI is that it's really nice. You can actually see this is how you would declare something like this with a list. And then this is a HStack, which is horizontal. So this way, for each of the rows, basically in the list, you have like an image, text, and then a spacer, and then the favorite thing. So it's kind of like a preview of how you specify your layout in SwiftUI. And so it's called like declarative UI basically. So instead of doing it in auto layout or writing all constraints manually and that kind of thing, it infers a lot based on the platform and like what use case you are. But it also does a pretty good job of making it simple to kind of jump in and start writing the UI. So that's nice, but the tricky thing can kind of be dealing with data. So the way the data model works, I'm not going to get too deep into this today, but basically you have the most common way to do it is you have an object that you just set up to update the view. So if you have a name for something in your object, you can just tie that to a text field in your view, and so whenever you update in the object, it'll update there. So it's really neat how it works, but it's kind of tricky to get set up. So we might do that part next week. We're going to kind of focus today on just the actual syntax, how it works, how you kind of lay out stuff. So it's not going to be fully working, but you're going to have an app to look at least. So it's kind of like when you lay something out in auto layout, but don't have any code behind it. So that's kind of the goal. So I'm going to get started. You can follow along if you want. Just let me know if I'm going too fast. And so I'm going to create a new project. Single view app. I'm going to call this Tap Game SwiftUI. So yeah, the key thing here is not only do you want to choose the language of Swift, but you also want to choose SwiftUI for the user interface instead of Storyboard. Storyboard's how we've typically been doing it. If you're going to iOS Club, or have made an iOS app anytime in the last 10 years. Well, storyboards haven't been around with, but you get it. SwiftUI is the new kid on the block here. So I'm just gonna save that.
Hey Dave, while that's loading, would you like to talk about like their swing? Like it used to be MVC, right? Like model view controller. We had view controllers, but now it's slightly different. What's this new paradigm?
Maybe you could explain that a little better, because I'm not very good at like the whole paradigm thing.
Well, basically, there's not controllers as much anymore, right? There's not this view controller that's mediating between the view and the model.
Yeah, you basically just hook the view up to the data.
Yeah, and the view updates in response to the model.
Right.
So as we'll see, this has a lot to do with the Combine framework, which is really just as important as the SwiftUI framework.
Yeah. Yeah, I always forget that people want an explanation like that, and I forget how to explain that. So basically, it's like model view, right? There's no controller, in a sense. I don't know.
I forget the exact name. It's like model view model.
NVIDIA.
Something like that. It's not model view. There's no view controller.
Right. You can use view controllers, but then you're not really using SwiftUI at all. Yeah, so, okay, let me see if we can get the previews working, because I don't think they wanted to work last time. So, by the way, was anybody here last semester when I did this similar talk? Okay, one of you. Good, so it's not going to be, oh well, hopefully you still find it moderately entertaining, but it's not going to be. Okay, yeah, that's usually what happens when you see one thing, and you know, it's like a couple months ago. So, yeah, just want to make sure I'm not like boring everybody with the same thing all over again. But yeah, that one went kind of a little rougher than I anticipated, mostly because I was trying to fit in like all the setting up the view and the dealing with the data at the same time, and so, you know, it takes a little more time, especially to get it off the ground. But it's, you know, it's really nice once you do have all that set up.
Why would one use SwiftUI instead of just like regular?
I mean, preference is one reason. A big thing about SwiftUI though is that it's cross-platform. So generally, you know, when you write an iOS app, it's just on iOS, and then you would have to like rewrite it in Cocoa or, you know, AppKit to run it on the Mac. To get it to run on Apple TV, you probably have to change a lot. A lot of, well, not everything is the same, but a lot of these are, SwiftUI basically tries to be generic enough. So, you know, if something's available, it'll run on all of their platforms, you know, watchOS, tvOS, iOS, macOS.
An example of this is sign in with Apple. One of the things I worked on at Apple was sign in with Apple, and I made a SwiftUI version of that because we didn't know about SwiftUI. We announced it the same WWDC, then I made a SwiftUI version. So then it worked. We basically, before writing code for tvOS, watchOS, iOS, all these different operating systems, and SwiftUI they were made for that. Write it once and it runs everywhere.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it's
you might
much
have.
less code.
Yeah, you might share a backend or something, but you still had to have, you know, separate UI layers for each of the platforms, basically. So this does kind of eliminate that, but, you know, of course it does introduce some other complexities.
It's definitely less code.
Yeah.
But it is harder, I would say.
Yeah, I would say it's a little harder to grasp at first, at least compared to you know, UI kit if you're used to that. Did I just break it? Okay. Well, yeah. So yeah, it can be a little tricky. I think just because it's just so different. But yeah. Okay. So what it gave us here, this is just like the boilerplate stuff. Let me see. So we've got, basically SwiftUI is built on structs. So we have a struct here that is called content view. And so it's of type view. And it's got this little function builder inside of it called body. And inside of that, you actually specify what you want to be inside the view. So here it's given us a little text thing, and it's passing the string hello world, so that we get, basically, it translates to a UI label on iOS. Actually, I'm not sure it does, technically. But basically, it's like putting a UI label on the screen that says hello world. And
It does.
yeah, well, I know some of it rolls its own kind of thing, but a lot of SwiftUI basically is just like, you know, if you have a list, it'll translate to a UI table view, basically one for one. So yeah, that's kind of like the back end. It doesn't really matter how it works that much to us. It's still kind of interesting. So we have our one content view here. And we also have this content view underscore previews. And so that's a preview provider. And so basically what this does is it lets us to customize our previews here. So we've got actually a live preview of the app. So you don't always have to build and run in the simulator and everything, which can get annoying. So yeah, this is really nice. And sometimes you want to pass in like dummy data or something, because this is generally just like one view at a time that you're going to be looking at in the previews instead of like the whole app. So that's kind of like how you would set that up. So anyway, let's actually get started with writing the app. Any questions before we jump in? Good. All right. Cool. So the first thing I want to do is we'll just start with a button. Because obviously we need to tap buttons for a tap game, and so you just make that with this button initializer. Let's see if it'll give me autocomplete. There we go. And so we want this one. It's, so it has an action parameter and a label. So just kind of that's we don't need that. Sometimes it gives us a little more stuff that we need. Yeah, so we've got, does it do it that way? Label, there, that's how we want it. So, you can kind of infer how this works. So we basically, run code here when the button's tapped, and in the label, we actually specify what's going to be in the button. So here we can make a text, and we're going to say this is player 1, and see if we can run the preview. Oh, missing a closing. There we go. So yeah, now we have a button that says player 1, and so when I click this button, we can actually run it here. So we've gone from previewing to it's the live preview, so it's kind of like running the little part of the app. Of course, it doesn't do anything because there's just a comment there. Basically, we want to increment score, but we're not going to focus on that today. But yeah, so then we want another button, right, for player 2. So we're basically just going to do the same thing. No point in making it harder than it has to be. So you may think, okay, this looks all right, but basically the way that the views work is that you can only have one thing that's directly inside of it, because this is basically a button initializer that returns something. We can't have multiple return values inside of this function builder. So what SwiftUI has given us is a way to stack them. So we're going to do it vertically. So they call that VStack. And we're just going to wrap it around our buttons here, and then indent. So now we've got a VStack that has a button and then another button. Is this going to work? This preview's going to get kind of wonky.
Hey Nate, what's the bug you just fixed there to make it actually compile? How does that relate to the line that says var body some view? It's an opaque return type, right? Body has to return some view.
So you fixing this, go from there to...
Yeah, explain this a little more.
Yeah, well, it has to return a view, not multiple views. There's some ways, like a list, it'll deal with multiples, but just a generic view, it needs needs just one, basically.
Because it says some view.
Right, and it needs an instance of view. Is that basically what it is?
Well, it just says some view. Yeah, it's like anything that's a view.
Yeah.
So any subclass of view.
Yep.
But they're
Yeah.
not
So like a button
subclasses,
is a
so-
subclass of
they're all struct, so it's more like
Well, yeah,
protocol
that's right.
conformance.
Yeah, sorry. But you can kind of think of it as subclassing as far as just functionality works. So I put the VStack back. But yeah, basically button conforms to view. And yeah, so now we have two buttons. They're stacked on top of each other. That looks a little better. And so we also have what's called a spacer. So we can use that to kind of stretch things out a little bit if we don't want them right next to each other. Come on. Yeah, so basically that'll, yeah. So now they're, all the way at the top, all the way at the bottom. That's a little better, but so we also want something in the middle. So in the middle we have, if you've done the tap game before, we have one score, and then there's next to that is the game timer basically, and the start button, and then on the other side is the other score, and that's all kind of horizontal. So we want an H stack, horizontal, to put some stuff in. That's going to go in between our buttons. Actually, I'm going to put another spacer below it, just so it stays even. And then, yeah, so we want our text that says player on score. If I can type. And we also want player 2 score. Let's see how that looks. I keep thinking the previews are going to get better, and then they just don't. Like, it thinks
It
there's
didn't
something.
work at all in the first version.
Oh yeah, it was really bad. And now it kind of works, but it also, it'll be like, oh, there's an error, and it just spits a bunch of junk out. Like, well, my code builds, but it can't preview. It's just.
Is running it just faster than?
Diagnostic say?
Sometimes. It's like connecting to launch, I don't know, generic human readable error, unexpected error occurred, message replied with error. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
If you do Command B and then you try again, it might work. Cleaning.
Well, I did
also
just build.
sometimes works.
Yeah.
Well, I know hitting try again builds, but
Yeah.
for some reason doing build by itself and then try again makes a difference sometimes.
Maybe
And
I
I've
need
also found like cleaning, Shift Command K works.
Yeah, I mean, at some point it's not worth it trying to fight the previews. As nice as they are in theory, it's not too much more trouble to just run it in the simulator. Unfortunately, because there we go, finally. I don't know, maybe my computer's just slow. But yeah, so now we have in the middle of our VStack is our H stack, and then we have our two labels in there. Cool, so that's looking a little better. I want to space them out, so I'm going to put a spacer in between them. And so that'll just push them out to the sides. So I also want to put one at the top and the bottom. That's one of the things about SwiftUI is you just get a ton of spacers everywhere if you're trying to lay stuff out like this. But oh well. All right, and then so let's see, what else do we want? Want a button that's basically start game. Yeah.
Like, ask a quick question. So,
Sure.
we're not returning a view, right?
Not explicitly, but it is kind of in the background. So basically, the return keyword isn't required, but we're still, you can basically think of it as, return vstack to,
It's kind of like an
this function.
assignment.
Well, these are the exact same thing. It omits the return keyword
Yeah.
in SwiftUI.
Yeah,
so-
it is returning, but you don't have to explicitly write return. Yeah. Okay.
It's a computed property, right? Isn't that what it's called?
Yeah.
Or-
I don't know in
like that.
SwiftUI, but it's the same syntax in Swift. for computer.
Yeah, they added this functionality to Swift for this, so.
Yeah, like, there was a bug in my code, and when I added it,
Yeah, I guess there are some things where it might, if you put return where it's not required, then it'll still work. But I don't know, SwiftUI is still kind of weird and buggy. I guess a lot of it is just Xcode too. Okay, so what was it trying to do? So I'm gonna put some background on these buttons. Oh, I was looking at the wrong thing, that's why. Okay, so we can customize our buttons a little bit. So inside the label here, I'm going to set a background color. To color.red. We should see that. Oh, sorry, it's just background. Is anybody else's previews working better than mine? Okay, so it's just me.
Hey, what if it's still loading now?
I mean, it is, but it's just slow.
There's an error on your previews. You just said try again, so just say try again.
Yeah, I shouldn't have to click try again every time though. That's, I don't know, maybe that's more.
Mine bugs out like that too.
Yeah, it's.
Like stop previewing because there was an error.
Yeah, I think it, because when you're writing code, of course it's gonna error out when it tries to build because you haven't finished writing everything, and then it's just like I give up.
Not if you
So-
write it quickly enough. Seriously, you have like 2 seconds.
Okay, well now I know. Okay. All right, this doesn't look very good, does it? So we have our background color. Basically, our button here is just this big. So we want to actually make the entire button bigger. And so the way we can do that is to explicitly set the frame on it. So we can, just in the same thing here, dot frames. Okay, I'm just gonna type it out. So the parameters are min width. I'm gonna set 0, max width, dot infinity. Min height, 0, max height, infinity, alignment. Oh, yeah.
I was wondering if you could comment on like the customizability of SwiftUI, because I talked to some when I was at DevDev, I talked to an engineer,
Okay.
and I asked him about it, and he kind of gave me like an ambiguous answer. Because when you use, so for example, like when you're using UI kit and stuff, you can really dictate how your UI is laid out very well, because auto layout and all that stuff is very customizable. But with SwiftUI, they kind of make you play around with the system that's already in place.
Yeah.
It's kind of tricky to customize things.
It can be. That is one of the trade-offs, I guess. You know, you can write less code, but you still have, you're a little more constrained. It's kind of like going up a level, kind of in abstraction. So it's more abstract, which is great when you want to write less, but if you want to specify more, you kind of have to go down. So I'm not sure there's a good solution. When you said customizability, first thing I thought of was I think you can make your own modifiers here. So like we do .frame, .background. So if you want to have like a set of these and use it a bunch, you can kind of specify that. And then you can also put UI kit stuff inside of SwiftUI. So if you want to, I think that's the best option really, is to, if you want to use SwiftUI, then you can mix and match stuff. So where you need to, you can use UI kit, and then where you can, use SwiftUI. That's a good strategy. But yeah, I mean, it's so new too that this could change in a couple years. So. But yeah, these hopefully in the next few years these previews do get better. I might have to just start using the simulator. But yeah, so basically, while this loads, what this frame modifier does is so the minimum we don't really care about, but we want to basically tell it to take up as much space as it can. So that's what we're doing with max width infinity, max height infinity. So yeah, so kind of like you can kind of translate this into auto layout, like just how you set it, you have heights for this, and you just say, oh, this will just take up the rest. So that's kind of what we're forcing it to do. It's just telling it to make the button as big as possible. Yes, Will?
I think if you stop running the preview, it might load faster.
Yeah, you might be right. Okay, so now we want to kind of do the same thing with the second button. Actually, first I'm going to set the color to white, because blue on red isn't very good. Yeah, for some reason it's foreground color and then just background, which doesn't make any sense.
Well, the foreground's like the title, right?
Yeah. The foreground is the text. I don't know. It's just kind of weird, side by side. Well, yeah. So like I was saying, you could make your. Oh, this is fragile. Everything's going wrong. Okay, we're back. So yeah, you could make your own modifier that does the same thing, which is pretty neat. But we're just going to copy and paste, and we're going to set that on layer 2. And so now, since we're telling the text on both of these buttons to be as big as possible, then they're going to kind of even out and be the same size. So maybe we can do blue or something. Yeah, I think that is helping well. I forgot I had that on, and yeah, I guess it versus translating the UI, it actually has to like compile the code. So I think that's probably some kind
It has
of
to compile it either way, but it starts from the beginning, whereas it can make just small incremental changes
okay.
here. But it still does.
There we go. Yeah, maybe that's what I've been doing wrong this whole time. Okay, anyway. So we've got our buttons. So what I want to do next is, this is already starting to get kind of out of hand. It's just a lot. So what we can do is, we have our button here, we have our button here, and that's good. But we're going to want you to add even more to this middle part. So maybe the best thing to do is to separate it out into its own view. So I'm just going to make a new file and then choose SwiftUI view. And then I'm going to call this score view. Like that. There we go. And so I'm just going to take this middle part and put it into here. Let's start with that. And then from here, I can just call score view. That's really all I should have to do.
You need to hit Command S on score view.
Because I moved it, is that what it was?
You can tell by, you see it's grayed out on the.
Yeah. Well, I mean, usually when it builds, it won't
Yeah.
matter. But maybe, is it?
It's just quicker.
Yeah. Xcode is a mystery. Okay, resume. So it should look the same, basically. Oh, right, yes, we need to put this in a VStack? Yes, VStack. Because we had it in a VStack before, and now it's complaining because it wasn't in one.
What was that hotkey you just used to indent everything?
Control I.
Control I.
Yeah, it's super useful when Xcode actually wants to indent the way you want to. Okay, so now we've got that. Just for fun, what we can kind of do, since we're just looking at the score view. Obviously, it's not going to look like this. It's not going to take up the whole phone. So down in the previews, we can actually set preview layout. And we're going to do fixed with a width of 400, 300. So this is just going to be like a rectangle instead of the entire phone. And so that's one of the things that's nice about this little previews thing down here, how you can customize that. Let's see, where are we missing from?
I'm gonna go down to iOS.
All right. Should I keep going? I mean, does anybody really care about iOS Club at this point? Table views. I think the table views today, right?
Yes.
I mean, I can pick this back up on next week, or I can keep going for like 15 minutes or so. It's up to you.
We keep going.
All right, let's keep going. All right, I may just have to put these previews too.
Nate,
Yeah.
how do you do so that your content view recognizes your custom export view?
Right. So what I did was, back in content view, I just called score view, just like a function.
Yeah, it says use of unresolved identifiers.
It looks like it may not be recognizing your file or somewhere struct somewhere.
It's like grayed out.
Take a look. Yeah, classic SwiftUI. Oh, what I also want to do here is put a spacer at the bottom. That's what I was forgetting. So then that'll kind of help too.
That's space here at the bottom of the post.
Yeah, just in there. So it's not all the way at the bottom. Cool. And then, all right, that looks pretty good. So I guess there really isn't too much more to this app other than the actual logic, right? Like we have a pretty decent UI going on here. You know, if we had more time, maybe we would deal with like the safe area and everything, because that looks kind of weird. But yeah, so we basically, you know, we've got a couple buttons going on, and our score view looks good. All right, so yeah, any questions with all that? All right, so what I was thinking about showing you real quick, I don't know if anybody has anywhere to be, that's cool. But so one of the really cool things about SwiftUI is the lists. So instead of doing all the UI table view stuff with like the delegate methods and everything, if it doesn't need to be dynamic or anything, you could just make a static list. So it's pretty cool. And I can actually try to demo that quickly, because I think it's one of the really nice things about SwiftUI. So I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna start a new thing. We don't have enough time to actually go through all the data for this. I do want to at some point. I'm not sure if there's anything going on next week for lab, but yeah, because that's where it really starts to get interesting, is with combine and everything. But yeah, it's just kind of a lot. We need like a whole 45 minutes just for that. But yeah, the lists are pretty neat. So what do I have? All right, so I'm just gonna close this out so it's not trying to do two things at once. So the way you make a list is just with list. And so if I just want it to be completely static, I can, apparently that slides out pretty easy. All right, yeah, so if I want it to be, if I just want like a list of like text, I can do text, and then I can have a couple texts here. Or a grocery list or something. Let's see if this will work.
I have to go to club, but you can
All right.
finish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure if it's just going to pretend it can't do the preview.
So what's that analog to like if we were just doing this without SwiftUI? Like is this just like?
So this is he's actually going to be doing that like right now in Club, is the UI table views. So yeah, it's basically just that. In the background, that's what it does. It makes a UI table view and
It's just
everything.
much easier though.
Yeah. See, like it's like 5 lines, and we have a list of a couple things. So obviously, it's not very useful as is, but yeah, especially for something that doesn't need to be dynamic. Well, actually, you can load just like any array into this. I can actually do that real quick. But yeah, especially stuff that doesn't need too much customizability. It's super easy in SwiftUI.
Do you know what cell is split?
Sorry, what's that?
Do you know like which cell is split?
So yeah, I can actually we'll get to that, or you can tap on them and stuff. But first, what I want to do is actually set this up with an array, so it's not just like defining it in the code here. So we need inside the struct we can just do var reminders. And so then I can do this. Okay. So that's nice. We have an array of strings, but unfortunately, the way SwiftUI works, we can't just do like reminders in here. What it needs, basically this, you can see in the initializer, if it'll, content. Okay, it doesn't say, but whatever goes in content here has to conform to the protocol identifiable, and that's basically, it needs to be able to identify each of the entries in the array. So what we can basically do is, we'll just make another struct up here real quick and conform to our identifiable. And so we want our name. And what we need to actually conform to this is var ID. And that's like object identifier, but we can actually just set that, we can generate a UUID, and that's all we have to do. So now our reminder here is identifiable. It's got, because especially if you think of, if you have like multiple of the same string, how does it know which is which? So basically that kind of evens that out. And then all we have to do is, and then give it a name. This is what happens when I try multi-line editing. Okay, basically like that. And then we can pass in reminders, and it should work. Oh. Sorry, I had the syntax wrong. Okay, so what this does, let's work. Oh. I keep forgetting how to do it for some reason. So it's like this. So basically we give it our array of reminders, and then in this closure, it's going to call this for each entry. With each of the reminder, each of the reminders as an input here, and then we just want to say, here, make a text with the name, and that'll get our string. Yeah, so now I think it's working. So yeah, to your question, if we wanted to actually be able to tap on them, we can make a button here, and then with the actual initializer and everything, and so obviously in this scope you would be able to tell which one is being tapped on, because you can just refer to reminder. But what I'm going to show you is it's pretty neat, is navigation link, which is basically well, it's really similar to button, except it's for use with the UI navigation controller. Well, it's basically an equivalent with that. So what it does is it'll push in the navigation stack, and I'm missing stuff here. So what we need to input for this is a destination, and we don't need a is active. Yeah, destination and a label. So in the label we can set the text. Reminder.name. And so for the destination, I'm just going to put a struct down here, which is kind of like what we did earlier with score view, but I'm just not going to make a new file for it. Reminder destination. Cool. So now we can basically just call this, and we want to pass the reminder to this. Yeah, so we want to actually be able to reference the reminder. And so this will synthesize our initializer and everything. So that's a nice thing about structs, is that, so we don't even have to explicitly write the initializer for reminder. And so, you know, we can just use the name, and then up here, we can say the destination is going to be this view, and then we're just going to pass in the reminder. And it starts to look a little jumpy. Okay. So now we want to do the live preview, and we should, oh wait, I forgot a step. So when you use navigation link, the requirement of this is you have to have the parent of this inside a navigation view, which actually sets up the navigation controller and everything. So the navigation view is going to be on the outside of all of this. And then we can actually set in here our navigation bar title, like that. So now we've got our navigation thing set up. And it should work. Sorry, no, I'm going kind of fast, but SwiftUI takes a while. Okay, there we go. Now it's working on the simulator at least. So yeah, now I can tap on apples, and then it, gives us our destination here. Well, now it's hanging, but yeah. So that's how you would set up like a whole navigation stack and everything. I think that's the gist of what I was trying to get at here. Is there any other questions before we wrap up?